Good afternoon, everybody. I'll say a bit about my role at the university so you have a better understanding about our experiences and what my presentation is about. So I'm the Research Skills Development Coordinator at the University of the South Pacific. My job is to ensure the university achieves its objective of explicitly teaching research skills to all its students. That's from undergrad up till PhD level. Luckily, I don't have to do all the work in this. So the RSD at USP presentation itself is about why and how the RSD framework and its implementation started at USP and what our journey has been like since then. I'll talk to you a bit about the implementation process and how we carry out monitoring and evaluation, and also about our current status. In the concluding remarks, we at USP would hope to provide you with some insights about what worked with our situation, what didn't, and what we hope to evolve so it works. There are a few ideas that we are exploring currently, and I'll talk more about that later. So I'll start. Why RSD? Now, I'll briefly go over this because in tomorrow's keynote presentation by Professor Vanwalaila, he'll go in depth about how the university really started with the RSD project. Now, in its efforts for the university to ensure that all our learning and teaching process are up to international standards, the university carried out a strategic total academic review, or as we call it, the STAR project. The STAR project had multiple different working groups which would look after the different areas that the university was focusing on. The four main areas that the university wanted to achieve excellence in was to ensure the provision of accredited programs at all levels, improve the pass rate, retention rate, and the completion rate at the university. Thirdly, to ensure there is greater progression from undergrad to postgraduate level of studies, and fourthly, to ensure all our students achieve certain attributes, what we call the graduate outcomes. Now, it is the graduate outcomes where the RSD project really came about. So the university wanted to ensure a way of achieving research skills and incorporating research skills and numeracy skills into the curriculum. So all our students, by the time they complete their studies, have some sense of research skills. Now, in the process of trying to figure out how exactly to achieve our objectives, the STAR working group undertook research, and they had visited multiple universities to figure out how other universities are undertaking this similar exercise. Now, in that process, USP came across the RSD framework and visited University of Adelaide and Monash as a result, and had an assessment of how things are working over there. Now, if you have some experience, or if you are from the two universities, you would know the approach is very bottoms up or top down a bit, and largely it's the academic staff who move forward with the RSD framework. Now, at our university, it's very different. We went for a top-down approach. So it was the senior management which decided the university needs to incorporate the RSD framework, and this is how we are going to do this. Now, there are good reasons to do this, even though it sounds very dominant on part of the senior management team. The University Council basically wanted results in terms of how we wanted Pacific Island researchers. And you cannot have that if most of our graduates complete their level of studies at the undergraduate level and take quite a bit of time, or very few move on to postgraduate level. So we need undergraduate students who can carry out research projects when they go out into the work environment. As a result, we had very little time to achieve what we wanted to achieve, and hence the top-down approach to ensure everyone follows suit. We did not have the time to get people to work at their leisure. No. All right. Now, there are multiple ways of incorporating RSD into the curriculum. For our university, we took the three approach of developing diagnostic assessments, developing RSD marking rubrics, and also curriculum reshaping. you will see initially the university had a 3 to 4 year implementation program where we had planned to have RSD embedded in all selected courses. So it was a course level implementation program where we wanted in each of the courses to have at least one RSD, embed RSD in at least one of the courses. Now, we are now completing year 6 into this project, and we are still at the implementation process. It sounds bad, but it's actually a good thing. We have faced multiple challenges. I'll talk about that later. But the process of implementation itself was staff were trained on the RSD framework. We had them create marking rubrics for RSD, and these had to be aligned with the learning outcome, the course learning outcomes, the program learning outcomes, and of course the assessment itself. Thirdly, implementation in at least one of the assignment. So it wasn't necessary that all the assessments in a particular course has to be RSD aligned. At least one to start off was good enough. Now, as I had mentioned, that it was a very top-down approach. However, after a few semesters of the project working well, the tone of communication had changed. So when I went through the previous communication between senior management and the staff, the emails went from RSD training is mandatory to RSD training is advised for academic staff. What had happened in that time was staff who had embedded RSD in their courses, they spoke to other staff and they said, initially it's a bit difficult because it takes your time to create the rubrics and entirely redo your framework if it's not aligned with the learning outcomes. But what it does is it saves your time. It saves you time and in marking the assessment, in explaining to students what you want to achieve from your course or what you want to achieve from each of the assessments, as well as it's much easier in terms of progression to a different level. So for 100 level, you can tell your students, these are the things that we want to achieve in this course. For 200 level, you can outline the autonomy of the research skills you are developing. So, now, during the 6-year period, mainly it was a 5-year period because we had a gap in administration. However, during the 2012 to 2016 period, we had 16 interactive workshop sessions. So even though it was a top-down approach, there were multiple consultation sessions with the academic staff, so their opinions are taken on board, and they don't feel too oppressed in terms of the implementation process. Of that, the head count for training was 500. It looks like a big number, but there are a few repeat sessions as well, so staff would come in for refresher sessions. And then in 2015, the academic staff, facilitated by the research office, had formed a community of practice. Now, the idea was for staff to learn from each other's experience and see what worked in the different disciplines. Those of you who teach would know that some things can be very discipline specific. Initially, we had some comments from our academic staff who said the RSD framework is too rigid for their particular discipline, and it might not work. However, you will learn tomorrow from the UU204 team, which is a very generic course about Pacific wars, that a seemingly rigid framework can be used to teach a course which covers multiple different nations and multiple different issues. And that has worked. So, all right. Now, apart from the pressure from the management to achieve RSD implementation, what has really worked for the university was the USP graduate outcomes. The university outcomes had aligned very well with the RSD facets. So, initially, the team had carried out an a mapping of the university outcomes and the RSD facets, and we saw that all of the areas in the outcomes are covered by the RSD framework. And of course, you can supplement those with other methods of assessment. University itself did not have a way to achieve the graduate outcomes. Now, in the absence of a particular framework to achieve the outcomes, the RSD framework took its place. And that sort of saw people going for the RSD framework. And that helped us in ensuring that there was at least some success in this area. Now, because University of the South Pacific is a 12-member nation institution, there are multiple things that we need to think about. And as John had said earlier, you cannot lock people in language. Now, the RSD framework, as I had mentioned, some people had mentioned to us that it's very rigid. It might not work in a particular discipline. But during the consultation sessions, during workshops with staff and students, we unpacked the RSD framework, so to speak. And there are multiple metaphors that emerged from these workshops, and these are the three that are very Pacific specific. So the idea of canoeing or sailing, the idea that you can carve out a canoe and then you set on a journey to reach your destination. It's a process of research. You want to achieve your end result, what is the way to get there? Similarly, weaving, the collecting of raw material and producing a mat. And that's something, again, you'll hear from the UU 204 team tomorrow, and coconuts. So the coconut plant itself has multiple purposes. And to achieve any one result, you need to know the process. So the overall idea is the process. What is the process? And that's something that staff feel more comfortable talking to their students about. So, and this is something that popped up mainly in the humanities and the social sciences discipline. We're still having some difficulties in the STEM area. So if there are any ideas from people who are in the STEM discipline in how to better unpack the RSD framework, I am happy. I'm all ears. Now, our current status at the university with regards to the RSD implementation, so far we have had 80% implementation in 81 courses. Now, 80% implementation means they have met the 4 criteria of staff being trained, assessments have been designed in line with RSD marking rubrics are designed, and they are in line with the assessment. And then there is implementation, actual implementation into the course. And then, of course, we move on to monitoring and evaluation. Now, there are some 80% because there are blended modes or online modes only, and there might be some courses which are only for face-to-face, which are RSD embedded. Now, these 81 courses span over 25 disciplines, and of these 8 disciplines which have an RSD embedded course in each of the different levels, which means they've almost near achieved a program level implementation. We just have to make sure that the implementation is progressive. Now, all this, the numbers seem big, but they only account for 7% of the total courses offered by the university. So there is still a long way to go. Initially, the university had not selected all the courses, so we are not doing too bad. Like overall, if you look at all the courses, then it's just 7%. But of this one selected, we are doing much better. It's because we had worked with the associate deans of teaching and learning, associate deans of research, and identified particular courses where it's easy to embed RSD. And that was the way to go. You have it in the easy ones, and then you work on the difficult ones. Now, however, we have RSD embedded in all our 100 level and 400 level generic courses. So it means at least all our undergraduate students have done at least 1 or 2 RSD embedded courses. Same for our postgraduate students. Now, I have to finish. Now, a word of advice, because you'll see this was our budget for the initial implementation. We went 78,000 above the initial implementation budget. What this means is you have to have a very strong commitment to enact change, especially if curriculum is involved. And there's so many people who are involved in the decision-making process, people who actually do the work. So you have to give it time. We had thought 3 years was a long time to achieve this. Clearly not. We are in year 6. We are still implementing. And also it requires a significant leadership support from the institution itself. With us, it was a bit easier. We had institution support, we had leadership support. Senior management had decided we want to implement this. But getting our staff to accept the change took some time. Also because we are a regional institution, it gets a bit difficult to train all our staff out in the region. Now, I'll leave with a comment, because we were lucky in a sense that our leadership, even though our leadership had changed with the research office itself, the implementation process of the project itself was not cancelled. So we were lucky in that sense. However, for those who are looking to implement it in the future, don't leave things to chance. If there's a chance, if there's a possibility to change the policy while you are at it, go for it. So what it would mean is when you are gone, the project stays. The way forward for us, of course, now is to centralize the training, to move on to a project level implementation, and make policy changes which would ensure sustainability of the project. Thank you. Oh, no. Actually, we are very excited about this change in project because after 6 years of implementation and now review, we've realized that in terms of project sustainability, the research offices may not be the best place to actually run the training sessions. We need more collaboration with other sections of the university to run the training for us. For example, in the research office, I'm the sole person looking after the project. So I physically cannot run the training. So the university library has agreed, basically they're very keen on coming on board and running the trainings with us. So recently they underwent a training with the University Monash Library, and now they're working on a work plan to run rollout trainings with students and staff. So previously we hadn't carried out any training with students. Now we are bringing on students on board as well and explaining to them why exactly they are getting these rubrics, or explain the terminology to new students. So yes.